Welcome back to another episode of the Inspired Podcast, where we're inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve. We got another awesome guest on the line. Most leaders think culture is created by what they say, but culture isn't actually created by what they tolerate. It's created in the conversations they avoid, the voices they ignore, and the moments when they choose comfort over courage. The hardest part of leadership isn't making decisions when things are easy. It's having the uncomfortable conversations when people are watching. Today, we're going to go beyond buzzwords and talk about what it really takes to build trust, create belonging, and lead people in a world where everyone wants to be heard. Today, I have an awesome guest, Michael Bach, on the line, a leading expert in diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. He has over 20 years of experience, and Michael has made significant impacts in fostering inclusive workplaces. So let's go ahead and give Michael a warm welcome. Thank you, Michael, for joining the call.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's go ahead and jump into it, right? Before we jump into it, just want to say thank you to everybody who consistently watch our show, share, like, and comment. If Michael says anything that relates to you, that you feel resonates with you, go ahead and like and comment, and let's have a conversation in the comments down below. All right. So, Michael, before you became known for helping organizations create better cultures, what experience shaped the way you see people and leadership today?
Uh, that's a great question, and I would say that the the main thing was coming out as gay in what the youngsters today refer to as the late 1900s. It was 1987, and it was not a time. It's not. This was a long time ago. It's not a time when members of the 2S LGBTQI plus communities were particularly celebrated. And what I saw was a significant amount of bias and discrimination. I actually didn't come out at work until 1999 and led this double life. And I watched as workplaces weren't paying attention to creating spaces where people can just come to work and do their jobs. That's ultimately what they should be doing. Create spaces where people can come to work and do their jobs and not have to hide something, not have to deal with discrimination in any one of its forms, whether that's racism, sexism, homophobia, whatever. All of those things that employers can actually control, they just weren't being addressed.
Yeah.
And it impacted my ability to contribute fully and others. And that eventually led to a career in DEIA, which is about workplace culture. DEIA is just about culture, just about creating space where people can come to work and be successful.
Nice. Okay. So you said it started with you coming out. So what led to that thought process of, oh, all right, I'm gonna come out and see what happened?
Samuel, it's really simple. I was not the butchest kid in the world. I was, while other boys were playing with trucks, I was playing house with the girls. All of my friends were girls. I didn't like sports. I came out to the shock of no one. And people had been telling me my whole life that I was gay.
Yeah.
So coming out was it was an acknowledgement of what everyone else already knew. And one thing that I give my mother a lot of credit, but she said that she didn't want me to live a lie. She wanted me to live openly and honestly. That's not to say that she was thrilled that I was gay, largely because it was at the beginning of the HIV/AIDS pandemic and everyone was dying. So she wasn't exactly thrilled. But at the same time, she recognized that that's who I was, and she didn't want me to be ashamed about that. So it really was just about living my authentic self from a very early age.
Awesome. So was there a moment you talked about being um authentic, right? So was there a moment in your career when you realized leadership was less about having the answers and more about understanding people?
Yeah, probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, in a bunch of different jobs where, I started to see the challenges that people were facing, which ultimately led me to get into the DEIA space. And certainly once I was in the DEI space, and let's not pretend for a second that there was this magic light bulb moment. It was something that evolved over time. And I would say the critical moment for me was when I started and ran the Canadian Center for Diversity and Inclusion, which is a charitable organization I created. And that was my first opportunity being in a CEO position. So there was only a board of directors above me. And the idea of having all the answers became incredibly stressful.
Mhm.
Like you feel this need to be the person with all the knowledge. And a coach that I was working with at the time said, you don't have all the knowledge, so don't pretend you do. And be honest with people. And that was a pivotal moment. And then from then on, I was like, yeah, if I don't know, I'm just going to be honest
Yeah.
and we'll figure out the answer together. And that's okay. The reality is, and this is something I've learned, there's always someone else struggling with what you're struggling with. Whether that's your sexuality, whether that's living with mental illness, whether that's just not knowing the answer, feeling like a fraud, imposter syndrome. There's always someone who's feeling that way. If you talk about it, you give permission to other people to talk about it.
Right.
And then you've got a community of people who can talk about it, and you commiserate and you become each other's support systems. And that is incredibly powerful.
Okay. So, what is something people assume about leadership that you completely disagree with?
What is, well, I mean, that you have to have all the answers. The other one is that leading with compassion makes you soft. And
Mm.
it doesn't, you're not a strong leader, and that you have to be this, and this is particularly amongst men, but some women do this too, this sort of aggressive, hyper masculine,
You gotta
leading
know
an,
I'm the boss.
right? That's nonsense. And I led an organization of 50 people where I didn't care if people knew I was the boss. People knew I was the boss. I was signing their
Yeah.
checks. That's enough.
Yeah.
But from that moment on, I said, my job is to make sure other people can do their jobs.
True.
And the only way I can do that is to know what their jobs are. And that means not having all the answers. It means being humble. And that is such a myth. And I see leaders do that. I think, ugh, a little humility, a little humbleness goes a long way
Yeah, for
to
sure.
building compassion and relationships and all of those things. It's just, let go of these preconceived notions of what it means to be a leader, because it's all nonsense.
So, when you were a leader and you were leading companies, how did you make
Mm.
that shift to know that and understand that I don't have to have the hard, I'm the boss, or you can lead with compassion? What was the shift for you?
Yeah, I've always been somebody who's very much like, I'm a compassionate person. That is who I am as a human. I am always thinking about other people's feelings, about their experiences. I want people to have a good experience. And again, there was this point where I thought, to be a leader, you have to stop doing that. And this wonderful coach I worked with said, pull your head out of your butt. What is that? No. So, being compassionate makes you a better leader.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's about helping people to do their jobs so that they do their best. If they do their best, then you do your best. My organization ran very well because I created a space where people could do their best. I hired really smart people who knew much more than I did. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Far from it. Be the smartest person in the room by hiring smarter people.
but that makes me uncomfortable. I'm not the smartest person in the room as a leader. So
Okay.
how do
Don't.
you how do
But that's the kicker though. You're never going to be the smartest person in the room. I heard part of our staff were very technical. We had a lot of IT people. And then part were like academic research, PhD level smart. I am neither of those two things.
right.
That is not my jam. I know what my strengths are. And that as a leader is something key. Know what you're good at and know what you're not. And get your ego out of the way because you're not good at everything. No person is good at everything. That is total nonsense. Let it go. Accept your limitations. Doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart because
Yeah.
you're willing to examine and go, yeah, I'm not good at that. Like if you said to me, I want you to fix my car, I'd say, I'm not the guy for that job. But I've got a friend, my friend August, who's really good with cars.
Yeah.
He starts talking to me about cars, and it's like the teacher's voice in Peanuts. All I hear is wah, 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 wah. I have no idea what he's talking about. I'm not the guy for that job. So accept
Yeah.
your limitations and then surround yourself with people that do a better job with those limitations. Do not find someone who is a mirror image of you because you got that covered. Hire somebody who fills in the gaps that you
Yeah.
will have inevitably. I know that makes people uncomfortable, but that's the thing about being a leader. You have to learn to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. That is a skill that leaders need to develop.
Yeah, and that was just me being an advocate and saying, "Hey, look, I don't."
Absolutely.
But what part of your own leadership journey required the most personal growth for you?
Oh, I'm going to be raw here.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I'll tell you what it is. This is so silly. I think people can read my mind. Like I say something and think that everyone's got it. And if they don't, that they are then going to ask questions. But, and if they don't get it, I think, well, you're stupid. Why don't you get it? I explained it perfectly. My husband and I had a fight very early on in our marriage. This is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was explaining something, he wasn't getting it. I was like, clearly you're the problem. You aren't getting it. And I carried this behavior into my leadership.
Okay.
And what I realized after many years, sadly, was no, if he doesn't get it, I haven't done a good enough job explaining it.
Mm,
The difference with him compared to my staff is he'll push back on me. He'll just say, I don't understand what you're saying. The staff in the room won't. And so they leave the meeting where I have presented my brilliant idea. That's sarcasm. They'll leave the room and they won't have a clue what I'm talking about.
yeah.
And then they go off and do things that don't actually further what I was talking about. And as leaders, and this is hard, this is very, very hard for leaders to do, is to create space where people can push back on you. It is not a natural inclination for human beings to push back on you when there is a power dynamic.
Yeah.
These people worked for me. Pushing back on me was a risk. It was a risk that I tried to encourage. And I would always say to people, push back on me, push back. I want you to push back. And some of them were better at it than others, and some of them didn't. So that was a big learning for me, was that people can't read my mind.
Yeah.
And I have to explain things. If I come up with an idea for a product or whatever, I have to explain in intimate detail what I'm thinking and create that environment where people can ask a lot of questions and they can push back, they can challenge. And that's not a bad thing, because I invent some brilliant things in my head that once they come out the mouth, maybe not so brilliant.
Huh.
surprisingly. And again, that's humility as a leader, that
Yeah.
I have no one pushing back inside my head. There may be multiple voices, but they're all in furious agreement.
Mhm.
So you have to understand and create that space where people can push back on you. And that requires you to make sure that you're explaining things in great detail.
Man, that's awesome. And I think that's powerful in itself because we may think we're out there presenting the best product, presenting everything to the T, but opening the floor and being able to understand that people may have questions and realize that you don't have it all, you know?
Uh-huh.
Everybody there's people who learn from audio, there's people who learn visually. So maybe you need a visual aid to help them learn. So not everybody's gonna get it. And it sounds like it took you a while to get to that point. So
It did.
yeah.
Sadly.
So I know it started with your husband and realizing that, but what was the shift that let you realize that this was an area that, all right, I gotta change this?
When people would go away from those meetings and they would come back with a different understanding than what I said. And it took me, sadly, years to figure out
Yeah.
the problem was me. And we're not talking about a lunch order. We're not talking about something simple. We're talking about, like, hey, let's build a brand new product that we're going to sell to clients, and it's going to be really complex and all of these things. Like, it's not simple stuff. And where people were people who are smart, they're they know what we do. They get it. We're coming back with completely different understandings of what I was trying to
Mm,
achieve. And that was where I started to go, there's a common denominator here.
see.
It's me. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm the problem. So inevitably I started to wake up to that. I was just yesterday or the day before, I was explaining to something to my husband, and again, he wasn't picking it up. He wasn't getting it. And after the conversation, and we'd had a conversation lasted about an hour, I thanked him and I said, you are my benchmark, because if I explain it to you and you don't get it, I haven't done a good enough job explaining it, because he's
Yeah.
really smart and he should get things. And he does get things when I explain them in a way that he'll understand.
Right. Okay.
People aren't mind readers.
Yeah, for sure.
Sadly, be very helpful if they were.
Many organizations say they want people to bring their authentic self to work. What prevents that from actually happening?
Well, they don't actually mean it. That's part of the problem. Workplaces, employers have cultures, and they may say that they want you to bring your authentic self, but they want your authentic self as long as it fits into the box of their culture. They don't want you to rock the boat. And I have said for many years that is a flawed way of hiring people. People will, these notorious questions like, could you see yourself going for a coffee with this person or going for a drink with them? Is that part of the job? No, it is not. That's nonsense. The question is not about, are they going to fit into your culture? The question should be, are they going to add to your culture? Every time you hire a person, you risk changing your culture. And that's not a bad thing. Maybe your culture needs changing. Bringing people into your organization that come from diverse backgrounds, whatever that diversity is. It could be race and ethnicity. It could be gender, sexuality. It could be education. It could be the skills that they have, where they grew up. Everything that impacts who we are. Every time you bring that difference into your organization, it stands to change the culture.
Yeah.
And you have to accept that that is going to happen. A lot of employers are not accepting it. They'll say, well, this is the way we've always done things. Well, if this is the way you've always done things, why did you need to hire someone new? What changed?
Yeah.
Right? So just because you've always done it this way doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. And that is something that employers don't necessarily embrace. Change hurts. It hurts our brains. It takes more time, but change can be a very powerful thing. I'll tell you a quick anecdote about that. Boeing, the airline manufacturer, when they were creating the 787, not the one that had so many problems, they brought together a diverse team of people to design the plane, and diverse in every aspect you can think of. They brought people from different legacy companies, from different departments, different levels, different roles. And the long story short, they developed the winglets, which is the tip of the wing that goes up, if you've ever seen one. That wing is being attributed to being the most fuel efficient wing in aviation history. It saves airlines a huge amount of gas
Hmm.
because their planes can fly at the same speed with less resistance, which means they save gas. That's what change can do. It can create these incredible innovative moments that you never saw coming.
Yeah.
And that's what employers should embrace, is change.
So say I'm an employer and I'm coming to you needing help with my organization. What would you tell me, or what would be some of the steps that you give somebody that's looking to get some help with organization and culture?
So I generally start with getting a better understanding of what the problem is. I don't, employers that come in with this, we need to improve our culture. Okay, why? What has happened that you say you need to improve your culture? What is the bad part of your culture that you're trying to address? And sometimes it's higher levels of turnover, and sometimes it's, lower engagement scores. There's always something. If the answer is because we don't think our culture works, okay, then we need to understand why the culture doesn't work. So then we might go down a path of focusing on doing some sort of culture audit where we gather a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of data, and we figure out what the problem actually it is.
Okay.
If the employer already knows, okay, our turnover rates are really high, and we think that's the indicator, then we might then still do a culture audit and understand what's going on. If they've already done one, then we can get to solutioning. But without the data, you become a solution looking for a problem. And I've had this in the past where, employers will call and say, oh, we need to roll out unconscious bias training. Okay, why? Well, somebody read a Harvard Business Review article on unconscious bias training and they really think it'll help. Okay, that's a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with unconscious bias training. It's very valuable too. What I would say is there was a 2016 study from a whole bunch of universities that found that people who took unconscious bias training reverted to their bias-driven ways within an hour of taking that course.
Hmm.
So it's not a matter of stopping unconscious bias training. It's a matter of making sure that you're doing something in addition to the unconscious bias training,
Right.
that you're
Okay.
focused on workplace culture, that you are, reinforcing the unconscious behavior. You're changing systems and processes to eliminate or at least mitigate the bias in the process. It is not a one and done. And so those employers, I say no to.
Okay.
There are lots of people who will absolutely say, yes, I will deliver that unconscious bias training for you. Great. I've been at this for 20 years. I'm not going to take on something if I don't think it's actually going to have some impact.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of determining, first of all, if there's the right fit from a relationship perspective, but then finding out what the problem is so we can actually develop a solution to address it.
Okay. So, what is something that you thought I would ask, but I didn't ask you?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Probably about my journey getting into the DEI space. Everyone wants to know that story. It's not a
Yeah.
terribly interesting one. I was in the right place at the right time, and someone asked me if I was interested, and I said yes. That's really the story. It's not that interesting. It's always work that I've wanted to do. I'm very passionate. My mother, she taught me from a very young age that the body I occupy as a white cisgender presenting man in North America comes with a lot of privilege, but that not everybody shares that experience. So I have the opportunity and responsibility to make sure that I'm leveraging that privilege to the advantage of others.
Yeah.
You as a Black man, I can leverage my privilege to help you. And that is a gift to me. And so I've always been that person who was advocating for people who didn't necessarily have a voice for themselves. And that inevitably led to a career in this field that I never saw coming.
Yeah.
But it's not that interesting a story.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing it either way, even though it was short and concise to the point. I appreciate it. And guys, I just want to thank everybody that tuned in today for Be Inspired podcast. We're inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve. Michael, thank you for coming on here, sharing your experience, your knowledge, and expertise with us. If anything that he said resonates with you, go ahead and like and comment down below and let's have a conversation. And how can people connect with you, Michael, if they're looking for some leadership training or culture change or anything like that? Where can they connect with you?
Absolutely. They can go to my website, michaelbach.com, or they can find me on social media. I am at the Michael Bach on all the social media platforms.
Awesome. I have it all linked up on this video. So go ahead and click the link below so you could get in contact with Michael. And we'll see you on the next episode of Be Inspired Podcast, where we're inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve.